Hi and welcome to the Riffsphere channel. In this video, we'll go over the basic steps for getting Unraid up and running on your home server. Unraid is a popular operating system for building and managing a home media server, and it's known for its easy-to-use interface and robust feature set. Step 1. Prerequisites. Before we get started, there are a few things you need to have in order to set up Unraid. A compatible system. You can check the Unraid forum and Reddit for guidance on hardware. A USB flash drive with at least 8 GB of storage. At least one hard drive, but it's recommended to have 2 or more for data redundancy. Step 2. Creating the USB drive. The first thing you need to do is download the Unraid disk image tool from the Unraid website. Simply go to the website and click on the Downloads tab. From there, you'll see a link to download the disk image tool. Once the download is complete, run the executable file. Simply click Yes on the user account control pop-up. Now, select the version you want to use and set your server name. Next, connect your USB drive to your computer and select it from the drop-down menu in the disk image tool. You might need to click the refresh button. Make sure to select the correct drive, as all data on the selected drive will be erased during the process. If you are unable to see your USB drive, I will link to another video with more info in the comments. Once everything is set, click on the right button to begin the process of creating the bootable USB drive, confirming you want to erase and write. The process of creating the bootable USB drive may take a few minutes, depending on the size of the image file and the speed of your USB drive. Just sit back and wait for the process to complete. Once the process is complete, you can safely remove the USB drive and use it to boot your Unraid system. Step 3. Booting Unraid. With our boot stick created, it's time to plug it into a server. Make sure we start from the stick and let it boot. If your system does not boot, check the description for a video with more information and troubleshooting. Once done, we are greeted by the IP address. Step 4. Prepare server. Now that our server has booted, it's time to configure it. Open a web browser and go to the name.local or IP address of your Unraid server. Set a strong password for your server and confirm it. Once done, we will be logged on automatically. Click the Start Trial button and wait for the trial license to be granted. Click next to the My Servers plugin to close it. Optional, change the theme to dark mode by going to Settings, Display Settings, scrolling down, and selecting black under Dynamics Color Theme. Click Apply. Optional, set up notifications by going to Settings, Notification Settings, selecting Email next to Warnings and Alerts, and clicking Apply. Scroll down to SMTP settings, select the preset matching your email provider, enter the necessary information, and click Apply. Don't forget to test the settings. Request in comments for a more in-depth video. Go to the Apps tab. The first time we have to install the Community Applications plugin and confirm the disclaimers. Then, install the Unassigned Devices, Normal, Plus and Preclear plugins. Click the Install button, wait for the installation to complete, and then click Done. Step 5. Preclearing disks. Go to Tools and click Preclear Disk. Select the disks that you want to preclear, either individually or by using the Start Multiple Sessions option at the top and selecting multiple disks while holding down the Control key. Keep the script and operation at their default settings and select 3 cycles. Enable notifications so you know when the process is complete. Keep skip pre-read and skip post-read unchecked. Click Start and let the preclear process run. This may take several hours or even days, depending on the size of your disks. Preclearing disks is not a mandatory step, but it is highly recommended as it helps to stress test your new disks, catch early failures, and keep your parity valid, while adding disks to the array by clearing every block on the drive. Step 6. Setting up array. It is generally a good practice to label and keep track of the physical location of disks in a storage system. Having the serial numbers of the disks recorded and associated with their physical locations can be useful for identifying which disk is causing a problem or for replacing a failed disk. It can also be helpful for maintaining the system and keeping track of the status and lifespan of the disks. So before we continue, I suggest you make a list. With a disk prepared, it's time to set up the array. Click on the Main tab. An array contains 2 types of disks, parity and data. Unraid supports up to 2 parity disks and 28 data disks, for a total of 30 disks, depending on your license. To see them all, you might have to increase the number of slots or reduce them for visibility. Step 6.1. Parity disks. If a disk fails or becomes corrupted or fails, the parity information can be used to reconstruct the data from the remaining disks. This helps to prevent downtime caused by disk failures and can improve the reliability and availability of the storage system. Single parity allows for a single disk to go bad. Double parity can recover from 2 failed disks. However, disk parity is not a backup. A backup is a separate copy of data that is used to restore the original data in case of loss or corruption. While disk parity can help to prevent downtime and improve the reliability of a storage system, it does not provide a way to recover lost or corrupted data. To protect against data loss, a separate backup system should be used in addition to disk parity. Because parity is not a copy of the data on the disks, but rather is calculated based on the data, they have to be as big as or bigger than our biggest data disk, not the sum of all data disks. If enough requests are made, I can provide a more in-depth video of how parity works. Using 1 parity disk for up to 6 data disks and 2 parity disks for 7 or more data disks is a common approach in RAID configurations, and I use it in Unraid as well. For this guide, I will be using 2 parity disks. Click on the drop-down next to parity and select the disk you want to use. Make sure you are selecting the correct disk by comparing the name with the serial number on the disk. Reminder: they have to be the biggest disk in your system. Step 6.2. Data disks. You can add up to 28 data disks to your array, mixing any speed, size and form factor like normal and laptop disks, as long as they are not bigger than your parity disk. While some people report it works for them, it's generally recommended to avoid using SSDs in your parity-protected array. Many SSDs use trim to clear deleted space in the background without notifying the system about this change, rendering your parity invalid. If you do decide to use SSDs in a parity-protected array, it's important to ensure that they are compatible with the system and do not interfere with the integrity of the parity information. Unraid operates in JBOD mode. This means that each file is stored on a single disk, rather than being striped across multiple disks. While this can reduce the performance advantage of using multiple disks, it can also make it easier to restore data in the event of a disk failure. If a single disk fails, only the data on that disk needs to be restored, while the data on the other disks remains intact. Let's start with assigning 1 data disk. Step 6.3. Starting array. Now that you have assigned your disks correctly, it's important to know that starting the array will overwrite all existing data on the parity disks. To start the array, scroll down to the bottom and click the Start button. You will receive a last warning that the parity disks will be erased. Click Proceed to continue. The array will begin to assemble and start. After a short wait, you may receive a message that there are unmountable disks present. In this case, you will need to format the data disks before you can use them. To do this, check the Yes, I want to do this checkbox, accept the warning that this will empty the disks and is not part of a recovery or rebuild, and click the Format button. This action should be almost instant. Once the formatting is complete, you can now use the space in your array. If you have done a pre-clear, your parity should also be valid. If not, the disk will be cleared and a parity check will be performed. Step 6.4. Pools. In addition to the array, Unraid also supports pools. A pool is a collection of 1 or more disks that can be used to store files or as a cache location for your shares. As of version 6.9, you can define up to 35 named pools, each with a maximum of 30 storage devices. To create a pool, we first need to stop the array. Scroll down on the main page and click the Stop button, then confirm that you want to stop the array. Now, click the Add Pool button. You will need to give a pool a name and set the number of disks. For our first pool, we'll use the suggested name cache and select at least 2 disks. This will force Unraid to use btrfs, allowing us to add more disks and run the pool in RAID 1 later on. As with the array, you need to assign the disks by verifying their serial numbers. Scroll down and click the Start button to begin creating the pool. Confirm that you want to format the disks and click the Format button. Your pool is now ready to use. Step 7. Shares. With our array and cache pool set up, it's time to have a look into shares. Shares are used to make a disk space available, locally and over the network, and configure how Unraid should handle them. Browse to the Shares tab. You'll see that there are some predefined shares already set up, but for now, let's ignore those and click on Add Share instead. On the left side, you'll see all the different options we have for configuring a share. Click on each option to expand it and get more information. First, we need to give our share a name. Let's go with data for now. Next, we can add a comment to provide a description of the share. This is a good idea because as the number of shares grows, it can be easy to lose track of which share is which. Now let's move on to setting up our cache. There are 4 options here. No, yes, prefer, and only. No means that the cache will not be used at all, and data will be written directly to the array. If your cache pool only has a single disk with no parity, this is a good option to choose for important data to prevent data loss in case the cache disk fails. Yes is the most commonly used option, and it means that the cache will be used as a temporary location, and the mover program will move the data to the array later. This is a great option for allowing you to copy data to your system at full network speed using a fast SSD as cache and then have it moved to the correct location on the array later. If the cache is full, new data will be written to the array immediately. Prefer means that the cache will be used as much as possible, and the mover program will even move data from the array to the cache if there is enough space. This is a good option for things that need to be fast, like virtual machines and app data, or that would generate too many parity changes, like temporary downloads. The only option means that data written to this share will only be written to the cache, and will give an error if the cache is full. The mover program will not touch this share at all. This can be useful in specific situations, but generally the prefer option is a better choice. If you choose anything other than no for your cache setting, you need to select a cache pool as well. In this case, since we only have one pool set up, there will only be one option to choose from. Cache, which is the name we gave to a pool. The copy on write option can save resources, but can also reduce performance in some situations. It's generally best to leave this set to auto unless you know you need to change it for a specific reason. The allocation method determines how Unraid will spread files over your disks. There are 3 options to choose from: fill up, most free, and high water. Fill up means that Unraid will just fill the first disk and then move on to the next one. This is a good option for archiving data. Most free means that Unraid will check which disk has the most free space and drive the file to that disk. This will spread files out the most, increasing the chance that data will be on multiple disks and allowing for the best read speed when accessing multiple files. However, it also puts the most stress on your disks by preventing them from spinning down as often. High water tries to fix the problems with most free by still spreading the files over multiple disks and keeping free space for split levels, but it does so using targets, so multiple files still go to the same disk, keeping others spun down. This is the preferred option unless you have a specific reason to use one of the others. The next important setting is called minimum free space. This can be a confusing setting because it's not actually about how much free space Unraid will try to keep on your disks. Instead, it's about how much free space a disk needs to have before Unraid will start writing to it. This is important because when you're saving or copying a file, Unraid doesn't know how big it is. If the file is bigger than the free space on the disks, Unraid will still start writing it and then give an error that the disk is full. To avoid this, you should set the minimum free space value to the largest file size you expect to ever copy. As a general rule, I start with 1% of my smallest disk capacity. Split level is a setting that can be used to keep folders on a single disk. This can be useful for keeping projects grouped together or making sure a season of a TV show is all on the same disk. Split level is a more complicated topic, so we'll cover it in more detail in another video. For now, it's best to leave it set to automatically split any directory as required, or you can experiment with it if you want to. Lastly, you can include or exclude specific disks for a share. Personally, I prefer to have all shares going to all disks. However, there may be some use cases where you want to exclude an older disk from your backup share, create a share with only your fastest disk, or dedicate one disk specifically for backup by making it the only included one for that share and excluding it from the others. Once you have everything configured, click on Add Share. Once the share is created, you'll see a new option for SMB security settings. Since I want to be able to access this share from my computer, I'll set export to yes and keep all the other settings on their default values. We'll explore the other options in more detail in another video. If we go to a server now, we should be able to see our new share. Bonus: disk location. Now that we know how to set up our array, cache and shares, we're getting to the end of the video. However, since we started by noting down the serial numbers and locations of our disks, I want to leave you with this one nice tool. To get started, let's go to the Apps tab and search for disk location. Once you've found it, simply click Install to add it to your server. Next, let's head over to the Settings tab and find the disk location utility. From here, you can access the Configuration tab, where you can customize the color of your parity, data, cache, and unassigned disks, as well as choose what information will be displayed. If you want to take it a step further, you can even add the disk location utility to your dashboard. To do this, we'll need to add a tray layout. This is a simple process, but feel free to add as many tray layouts as you like and customize them to match your server layout. Once you've finished designing your tray layout, press the Save button to see a preview of what it will look like on your dashboard. Now that we've got our tray layout set up, it's time to assign our disks to the appropriate trays. To do this, go to the Tray Allocations tab. Here, you'll see a list of all the connected disks, along with their serial numbers and additional information. Simply go through each disk and assign it to the correct group and tray ID, as well as set the date of purchase. The warranty information you can add after saving. You can even add a comment with details such as the shop where you bought the disk. Once you've finished assigning your disks, simply click the Save button and check out your updated dashboard. It even has a mouse over feature that shows the status of each disk. That's it. You're now ready to use the disk location utility to keep track of your disks and visualize your server layout. Don't be afraid to play around with the settings and customize it to your liking. Thank you for watching our basic Unraid setup guide. We hope that you found it helpful and that you now have a better understanding of how to set up and use Unraid. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our channel for more tech tutorials. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.